Chapter 1. Dick Comes to Stay. Dick was about the same age as Joe. He was a merry boy, rather naughty, and it would be such fun to have him. "He can sleep with me in my little bedroom," said Joe. "Oh, Mother, what fun. When is he coming?" "Tomorrow," said Mother. "You girls can put up a little bed for him in Joe's room. And Joe, you must make room for Dick's things in your cupboard. He is going to stay quite a long time because his mother is ill and can't look after him." The 3 children flew upstairs to get Joe's room ready for Dick as well. "I say, what will Dick say when we tell him about the enchanted wood and the faraway tree?" cried Joe. "And what will he say when we show him our friends there, Silky and Old Moonface, and the dear old deaf saucepan man, and everyone?" said Bessie. "He will get a surprise," said Fanny. They got everything ready for their cousin. They put up a little camp bed for him and found some blankets. They put a cushion for a pillow. They made room in Joe's cupboard and chest of drawers for Dick's things. Then they looked out of the window. It looked on to a dark, thick wood whose trees waved in the wind not far from the bottom of the garden. "The enchanted wood," said Bessie softly. "What marvelous adventures we have had there. Maybe Dick will have some too." Dick arrived the next day. He came in the carrier's cart with a small bag of clothes. He jumped down and hugged the children's mother. "Hallo, Aunt Polly," he said. "It's good of you to have me. Hallo, Joe. I say, aren't Bessie and Fanny big now? It's lovely to be with you all again." The children took him up to his room. The girls unpacked his bag and put his things neatly away in the cupboard and the chest. They showed him the bed he was to sleep on. "I expect I shall find it rather dull here after living in London," said Dick, putting his hairbrushes on the little dressing table. "It seems so quiet. I shall miss the noise of buses and trams." "You won't find it dull," said Joe. "My word, Dick, we've had more adventures since we've been here than ever we had when we lived in a big town." "What sort of adventures?" asked Dick in surprise. "It seems such a quiet place that I shouldn't have thought there was even a small adventure to be found." The children took Dick to the window. "Look, Dick," said Joe. "Do you see that thick, dark wood over there, backing onto the lane at the bottom of our garden?" "Yes," said Dick. "It seems quite ordinary to me, except that the leaves of the trees seem a darker green than usual." "Well, listen, Dick, that's the enchanted wood," said Bessie. Dick's eyes opened wide. He stared at the wood. "You're making fun of me," he said at last. "No, we're not," said Fanny. "We mean what we say. Its name is the enchanted wood, and it is enchanted. And oh, Joe, in the middle of it is the most wonderful tree in the world." "What sort of tree?" asked Dick, feeling quite excited. "It's a simply enormous tree," said Joe. "Its top goes right up to the clouds. And oh, Dick, at the top of it is always some strange land. You can go there by climbing up the top branch of the faraway tree, going up a little ladder through a hole in the big cloud that always lies on the top of the tree. And there you are in some peculiar land." "I don't think I believe you," said Dick. "You are making it all up. Dick, we'll take you there and show you what we mean," said Bessie. "It's all quite true. Oh, Dick, we've had such exciting adventures at the top of the faraway tree. We've been to the rocking land and the birthday land and the land of take what you want and the land of the snowman," said Fanny. "You just can't think how exciting it all is. And, Dick, all kinds of queer folk live in the trunk of the faraway tree," said Joe. "We've lots of good friends there. We'll take you to them one day. There's a dear little fairy called Silky, because she has such a mass of silky gold hair. And there's Moonface, with a big round face like the moon. He's a darling, said Bessie. And there's funny old Mr. Watts's name, said Fanny. What's his real name? Asked Dick in surprise. Nobody knows, not even himself, said Joe. So everyone calls him Mr. Watts's name. Oh, and there is the old saucepan man. He's always hung round with kettles and saucepans and things, and he's so deaf that he always hears everything wrong. Dick's eyes began to shine. Take me there, he begged. Quick, take me. I can't wait to see all these exciting people. We can't go till Mother says she doesn't need us in the house, said Bessie. But we will take you, of course we will. And Dick, there's a slippery slip, a slide that goes right down the inside of the tree from the top to the bottom, said Fanny. It belongs to Moonface. He lends people cushions to slide down on. I do want to go down that slide, said Dick, getting terribly impatient. Why do you tell me all these things if you can't take me to see them now? I'll never be able to sleep tonight. Good gracious. My head feels in a whirl already to think of the Faraway tree and Moonface and Silky and the slippery slip. Dick, we'll take you as soon as ever we can, promised Joe. There's no hurry. The Faraway tree is always there. We never know what land is going to be at the top. We have to be very careful sometimes, because there might be a dangerous land, one that we couldn't get away from. A voice came from downstairs. Children, are you going to stay up all the day? I suppose you don't want any tea. What a pity, because I have made some scones for you and put out some strawberry jam. 4 children raced down the stairs. Scones and strawberry jam. Gracious, they weren't going to miss those. Good old Mother, she was always thinking of some nice little treat for them. Joe, Father wants you to dig up some potatoes for him after tea, said Mother. Dick can help you. And Bessie and Fanny, I want you to finish my ironing for me, because I have to take some mended clothes to Mrs. Harris, and she lives such a long way away. The children had been rather hoping to go out and take Dick to the enchanted wood. They looked disappointed, but they said nothing, because they knew that in a family, everyone had to help when they could. Mother saw their disappointed faces and smiled. I suppose you want to take Dick to see those peculiar friends of yours, she said. Well now, listen if you are good children today, and do the jobs you have to do. I'll give you a whole day's holiday tomorrow. Then you may take your dinner and your tea and go to visit any friends you like. How would you like that? Oh, Mother, thank you, cried the children in delight. A whole day, said Bessie. Why, Dick, we can show you everything, and maybe let you peep into whatever land is at the top of the Faraway tree, whispered Fanny. Oh, what fun. So they did their work well after tea and looked forward to the next day. Dick dug hard, and Joe was pleased with him. It was going to be fun to have a cousin with them, able to work and play and enjoy everything too. When they went to bed that night, they left the doors of their rooms open so that they might call to one another. Sleep well, Dick, called Bessie. I hope it's fine tomorrow. What fun we shall have. Good night, Bessie, called back Dick. I can't tell you how I'm longing for tomorrow. I know I shan't be able to sleep tonight. But he did, and so did all the others. When Mother came up at 10 o'clock, she peeped in at the children, and not one was awake. Joe woke first next day. He sat up and looked out of the window. The sun streamed in, warm and bright. Joe's heart jumped for joy. He leaned over to Dick's bed and shook him. "Wake up," he said. "It's tomorrow now, and we're going to the Enchanted Wood." Chapter 2. Off to the Enchanted Wood. The children ate their breakfast quickly. Mother told Bessie and Fanny to cut sandwiches for themselves and to take a small chocolate cake from the larder. "You can take a packet of biscuits, too," she said, "and there are apples in that dish over there. If you are hungry when you come home tonight, I will bake you some potatoes in the oven, and you can eat them in their skins with salt and butter." "Ooh, Mother, we shall be hungry," said Joe at once. "Hurry up with those sandwiches, Bessie and Fanny. We want to start off as soon as possible." "Now, don't be too late home, or I shall worry," said Mother. "Look after your cousin Joe." "Yes, I will," promised Joe. At last, everything was ready. Joe packed the food into a leather bag and slung it over his shoulder. Then the four of them set off to the Enchanted Wood. It didn't take them long to get there. A narrow ditch was between the lane and the wood. "You've got to jump over the ditch, Dick," said Joe. They all jumped over. Dick stood still when he was in the wood. "What a strange noise the leaves of the trees make," he said. "It's as if they were talking to one another, telling secrets." "Wisha, wisha, wisha, wisha," whispered the trees. "They are talking secrets," said Bessie. "And do you know, Dick, if the trees have any message for us, we can hear it by pressing our left ears to the trunks of the trees. Then we really hear what they say." "Wisha, wisha, wisha, wisha," said the trees. "Come on," said Joe impatiently. "Let's go to the Faraway tree." They all went on and soon came to the queer magic tree. Dick stared at it in the greatest astonishment. "Why, it's simply enormous," he said. "I've never seen such a big tree in my life, and you can't possibly see the top. Goodness gracious. What kind of tree is it? It's got oak leaves, and yet it doesn't really seem like an oak." "It's a funny tree," said Bessie. "It may grow acorns and oak leaves for a little way, and then suddenly you notice that it's growing plums. Then another day it may grow apples or pears. You just never know, but it's all very exciting." "How do you climb it?" asked Dick. "In the ordinary way." "Well, we will today," said Joe, "because we want to show you our friends who live inside the tree. But sometimes there's a rope that is let down the tree, and we can go up quickly with the help of that. Or sometimes Moonface lets down a cushion on the end of a rope and then pulls us up one by one." He swung himself up into the tree, and the others followed. After a bit, Dick gave a shout. "I say, it's most extraordinary. This tree is growing nuts now." Look, sure enough it was. Dick picked some and cracked them. They were hazelnuts, ripe and sweet. Everyone had some and enjoyed them. Now, when they had all got very high up indeed, Dick was most surprised to see a little window in the trunk of the faraway tree. "Goodness, does somebody live just here?" he called to the others. "Look, there's a window here. I'm going to peep in." "You'd better not," shouted Joe. "The angry pixie lives there, and he hates people peeping in." But Dick felt so curious that he just had to peep in. The angry pixie was at home. He was filling his kettle with water when he looked up and saw Dick's surprised face at his window. Nothing made the pixie so angry as to see people looking at him. He rushed to the window at once and flung it open. "Peeping again," he shouted. "It's too bad. All day and night people come peeping. Take that." He emptied the kettle of water all over poor Dick. Then he slammed his window and drew the curtains across. Joe, Bessie, and Fanny couldn't help laughing. "I told you not to peep in at the angry pixie," said Joe, wiping Dick with his hanky. "He's nearly always in a bad temper. Oh, and by the way, Dick, I must warn you about something else. There's an old woman who lives high up in the tree who is always washing. She empties the water down the tree, and it comes slish-sloshing down. You'll have to look out for that, or you'll get wet." Dick looked up the tree as if he half expected the water to come tumbling down at once. "Come on," said Bessie. "We'll come to where the owl lives soon. He's a friend of Silky's, and sometimes brings us notes from her." The owl was fast asleep. He usually only woke up at night time. Dick peered in at his window and saw the big owl asleep on a bed. He couldn't help laughing. "I am enjoying all this," he said to Fanny. "It's quite an adventure. How all the boys and girls at my school would long to be climbing up this tree with me if they could." The children climbed higher and came to a broad branch. "There's a dear little yellow door with a knocker and a bell," cried Dick in surprise, staring at the door set neatly in the trunk of the tree. "Who lives there?" "Our friend Silky," said Joe. "Ring the bell and she'll open the door." Dick rang the little bell and heard it go ting-a-ling inside. Footsteps pattered to the door. It opened, and a pretty little elf looked out. Her hair hung round her face like a golden mist. "Hallo, Silky," cried Joe. "We've come to see you, and we've brought our cousin Dick, who has come to live with us. He's having a lovely time exploring the Faraway tree." "How do you do, Dick?" said Silky, holding out her small hand. Dick shook hands shyly. He thought Silky was the loveliest creature he had ever seen. "I'll come with you if you are going to visit Moonface," said Silky. "I want to borrow some jam from him. I'll take some pop biscuits with me, and we'll have them in Moonface's house." "Whatever are pop biscuits?" asked Dick in surprise. "Wait and see," said Joe with a grin. They all went up the tree again. Soon they heard a funny noise. "That's old Mr. Watts's name snoring," said Joe. "Look, there he is." Sure enough, there he was, sitting in a comfortable chair, his hands folded over his big tummy, and his mouth wide open. "How I'd love to pop something into his open mouth," said Dick at once. "Yes, that's what everybody feels," said Joe. "Moonface and Silky once popped some acorns in, didn't you, Silky? And Watts's name was very angry. He threw Moonface up through the hole in the cloud and landed him into the strange country there." "Where's the old saucepan man?" asked Bessie. "He is usually with his friend, Mr. Watts's name." "I expect he has gone to see Moonface," said Silky. "Come on, we'll soon be there." As they went up the tree, Silky suddenly stopped. "Listen," she said. They all listened. They heard a curious noise, slishy-sloshy, slishy-sloshy, coming nearer and nearer. "It's Dame Washalot's dirty water coming," yelled Joe. "Get under a branch, everyone." Dick wasn't as quick as the others. They all hid under big boughs, but poor old Dick wasn't quite under his when the water came pouring down the tree. It tumbled onto his head and went down his neck. Dick was very angry. The others were sorry, but they thought it was very funny too. "Next time I climb this tree, I'll wear a bathing dress," said Dick, trying to wipe himself dry. "Really, I think somebody ought to stop Dame Washalot pouring her water away like that. How disgusting." "Oh, you'll soon get used to it and dodge the water easily," said Joe. On they all went up the tree again, and at last came almost to the top. There They saw a door in the trunk of the tree, and from behind the door came the sound of voices. "That's Moonface and the old saucepan man," said Joe, and he banged on the door. It flew open, and Moonface looked out. His big round face beamed with smiles when he saw who his visitors were. "Hallo, hallo, hallo," he said. "Come along in. The saucepan man is here." Everyone went into Moonface's curious round room. There was a large hole in the middle of it, which was the beginning of the slippery slip, the wonderful slide that went round and round down the inside of the tree, right to the bottom. Moonface's furniture was arranged round the inside of the tree trunk, and it was all curved to fit the curve of the tree. His bed was curved, the chairs were curved, the sofa and the stove. It was very queer. Dick stared at it all in the greatest surprise. He really felt as if he must be in a dream. He saw somebody very queer sitting on the sofa. It was the old saucepan man. He really was a very curious sight. He was hung all round with saucepans and kettles, and he wore a saucepan for a hat. You could hardly see anything of him except his face, hands, and feet, because he was so hung about with saucepans and things. He made a tremendous clatter whenever he moved. "Who's that?" he said, looking at Dick. "This is Dick," said Joe, and Dick went forward to shake hands. The saucepan man was very deaf, though he did sometimes hear quite well. But he nearly always heard everything wrong, and sometimes he was very funny. "Chick," he said. "Well, that's a funny name for a boy." "Not Chick, but Dick," shouted Moonface. "Stick," said the saucepan man, shaking hands. "Good morning, Stick. I hope you are well," Dick giggled. Moonface got ready to shout again, but Silky quickly handed him her bag of pop biscuits. "Don't get cross with him," she said. "Look, let's all have some pop biscuits. They are fresh made today. And oh, Moonface, do tell us what land is at the top of the Faraway tree today." "The land of Topsy-Turvy," said Moonface. "But I don't advise you to go there. It's most uncomfortable." "Oh, do let's," cried Dick. "Can't we just peep at it?" "We'll see," said Joe, giving him a pop biscuit. "Eat this, Dick." Pop biscuits were lovely. Dick put one in his mouth and bit it. It went pop at once, and he found his mouth full of sweet honey from the middle of the biscuit. "Delicious," he said. "I'll have another. I say, Joe, do let's take our lunch up into the land of Topsy-Turvy." "Oh, do. Chapter 3. The Land of Topsy-Turvy. "What is Topsy-Turvy Land like?" asked Joe, taking another pop biscuit. "Never been there," said Moonface. "But I should think it's quite safe, really. It's only just come there, so it should stay for a while. We could go up and see what it's like, and come down again if we don't like it. Silky and I and Saucepan will come with you, if you like." Moonface turned to the saucepan man, who was enjoying his 5th pop biscuit. "Saucepan, we're going up the ladder," he said. "Are you coming?" "Humming," said Saucepan, looking all round as if he thought there might be bees about. "No, I didn't hear any humming." "I said, are you coming?" said Moonface. "Oh, coming," said Saucepan. "Of course I'm coming. Are we going to take our lunch?" "Yes," said Moonface, going to a curved door that opened onto a tiny larder. "I'll see what I've got. Tomatoes, plums, ginger snaps, ginger beer. I'll bring them all." He put them into a basket. Then they all went out of the funny, curved room on to the big branch outside. Moonface shut his door. Joe led the way up to the very top of the faraway tree. Then, suddenly, Dick gave a shout of astonishment. "Look," he cried. "There's an enormous white cloud above and around us. Isn't it queer?" Sure enough, a vast white cloud swam above them, but just nearby was a hole right through the cloud. "That's where we go, up that hole," said Joe. "See that branch that goes up the hole? Come on." They all went up the last and topmost branch of the faraway tree. It went up and up through the purple hole in the cloud. At the very end of the branch was a little ladder. Joe climbed the ladder, and suddenly his head poked out into the land of topsy-turvy. Then, one by one, all the others followed, and soon all 7 of them stood in the curious land. Dick was not as used to strange lands as were the others. He stood and stared, with his eyes so wide open that it really seemed as if they were going to drop out of his head. And indeed, it was a strange sight he saw. Every house was upside down and stood on its chimneys. The trees were upside down, their heads buried in the ground and their roots in the air. And, dear me, the people walked upside down too. "They are walking on their hands, with their legs in the air," said Joe. "Goodness, what a queer thing to do." Everyone stared at the folk of topsy-turvy land. They got along very quickly on their hands, and often stopped to talk to one another, chattering busily. Some of them had been shopping, and carried their baskets on one foot. A dog went by, walking on its front legs, its back legs and tail in the air. The children squealed with laughter. "Let's go and peep inside a house and see what it's like, all topsy-turvy," said Joe. So they set off to the nearest house. It looked most peculiar standing on its chimneys. No smoke came out of them, but smoke came out of a window near the top. "How do we get in?" said Bessie. They watched a topsy-turvy man walk on his hands to another house. He jumped in at the nearest window, going up a ladder first. The children looked for the ladder that entered the house they were near. They soon found it. They went up it to a window and peeped inside. "Gracious," said Joe. "Everything really is upside down in it, the chairs and tables and everything. How uncomfortable it must be." An old lady was inside the house. She was sitting upside down in an upside-down chair and looked very peculiar. She was angry when she saw the children peeping in. She clapped her hands, and a tall man, walking on his hands, came running in from the next room. "Send those rude children away," shouted the old woman. The tall man hurried to the window on his hands, and the children quickly slid down the ladder, for the man looked rather fierce. "It's a silly land, I think," said Joe. "I vote we just have our lunch and then leave this place. I wonder why everything is topsy-turvy." "Oh, a spell was put on everything and everybody," said Moonface, "and in a trice everything was topsy-turvy. Look, wouldn't that be a good place to sit and eat our lunch in?" It was under a big oak tree whose roots stood high in the air. The children sat down, and Joe and Moonface set out the lunch. It looked very good. "There's plenty for everybody," said Joe. "Have a sandwich, Silky. Saucepan, have a plum." "Crumb," said Saucepan in surprise. "Is that all you can spare for me, a crumb?" "Plum, plum, plum," said Moonface, pushing a ripe one into the Saucepan man's hands. "Oh, plum," said Saucepan. "Well, why didn't you say so?" Everybody giggled. They all set to work to eat a good lunch, the middle of it, Joe happened to look round, and he saw something surprising. It was a policeman coming along, walking on his hands, of course. He had his helmet on his feet instead of on his head, so he looked very peculiar. "Look what's coming," said Joe with a laugh. Everyone looked. Moonface went pale. "I don't like the look of him," he said. "Suppose he's come to lock us up for something. We couldn't get away down the Faraway tree before this land swung away from the top." The policeman came right up to the little crowd under the tree. "Why aren't you topsy-turvy?" he asked in a stern voice. "Don't you know that the rule in this land is that everything and everyone has to be upside down?" "Yes, but we don't belong to this silly land," said Joe. "And if you were sensible, you'd make another rule, saying that everybody must be the right way up. You've just no idea how silly you look, policeman, walking on your hands with your helmet on your feet." The policeman went red with anger. He took a sort of stick from his belt and tapped Joe on the head with it. "Topsy-turvy," he said, "topsy-turvy." And to Joe's horror, he had to turn himself upside down at once. The others stared at poor Joe, standing on his hands, his legs in the air. "Oh, golly," cried Joe. "I can't eat anything properly now because I need my hands to walk with. Policeman, put me right again." "You are right now," said the policeman, and walked solemnly away on his hands. "Put Joe the right way up," said Dick. So everyone tried to get him over so that he was the right way up again. But as soon as they got his legs down and his head up, he turned topsy-turvy again. He just couldn't help it, for he was under a spell. A group of topsy-turvy people came to watch. They laughed loudly. "Now he belongs to topsy-turvy land," they cried. "He'll have to stay here with us." "Never mind. Boy, you'll soon get used to it." "Take me back to the faraway tree," begged Joe, afraid that he really and truly might be made to stay in this queer land. "Hurry." Everyone jumped to their feet. They helped Joe along to where the hole ran down through the cloud. He wasn't used to walking on his hands, and he kept falling over. They tried their best to make him stand upright, but he couldn't. The spell wouldn't let him. "It will be difficult to get him down through the hole," said Dick. "Look, there it is. I'd better go down first and see if I can help him. You others push him through as carefully as you can. He'll have to go upside down, I'm afraid." It was very difficult to get Joe through the hole, because his hands and head had to go first. Moonface held his legs to guide him. Dick held his shoulders as he came down the ladder, so that he wouldn't fall. At last, they were all 7 through the hole in the clouds, and were on the broad branch outside Moonface's house. Joe held on to the branch with his hands. His legs were in the air. "Moonface, Silky, can't you possible take this spell away?" groaned he. "It's simply dreadful. Silky, what land is coming to the top of the faraway tree next?" asked Moonface. "Have you heard? I think it's the land of spells," said Silky. "It should come tomorrow, but I'm not really sure." "Oh, well, if it's the land of spells, we could easily get a spell from there to put Joe right," said Moonface, beaming. "Joe, you must stay the night with me and wait for the land of spells tomorrow. The others can go home and tell what has happened." "All right," said Joe. "I can't possibly climb up the tree again if I'm upside down, so I'll just have to wait here. Mother will never believe it, though, when the others tell her why I don't go home. Still, it can't be helped." They all went into Moonface's house. Joe stood on a chair, upside down. The others sat about and talked. Dick was sorry for Joe, help feeling a bit excited. Goodness, if this was the sort of adventure that Joe, Bessie, and Fanny had, what fun things were going to be. The others began telling him all the adventures they had had. Silky made some tea and went down the tree to fetch some more pop biscuits. When it was 5:30, Bessie said they must go. "Goodbye, Joe," she said. "Don't be too unhappy. Pretend you are a bat. They always sleep upside down, you know, and don't mind a bit. Come on, Dick, we're going down the slippery slip." Dick was excited. He took the red cushion that Moonface gave him and sat himself at the top of the slide. Bessie gave him a push, and off he went, round and round the inside of the enormous Faraway tree, sitting safely on his cushion. What a way to get down a tree. Chapter 4, The Land of Spells. Dick shot round down the inside of the Faraway tree on his cushion. He came to the bottom. He shot out of the trapdoor there and landed on the soft green moss. He sat there for a moment, out of breath. "That's the loveliest slide I've ever had," he thought to himself. "Ooh, wouldn't I like to do that again?" He had just got up from the moss when the trapdoor at the bottom of the tree opened once again, and Fanny shot out on a yellow cushion. Then came Bessie, giggling, for she always thought it was a huge joke to slide down inside the tree like that. "What do we do with the cushions?" asked Dick. "Does Moonface want them back?" "Yes, he does," said Fanny, picking them up. "The red squirrel always collects them and sends them back to him." As she spoke, a red squirrel, dressed in a jersey, popped out of a hole in the trunk. "Here are the cushions," said Fanny, and the squirrel took them. He looked up into the tree, and a rope came swinging down. "Moonface always lets it down for his cushions," said Bessie. Dick watched the squirrel tie the 3 cushions to the rope end. Then he gave 3 gentle tugs at the rope, and at once the rope was pulled up, and the cushions went swinging up the tree to Moonface. "I wish Joe was with us," said Dick, as they all went home. "Do you suppose Aunt Polly will be worried about him?" "Well, we'll have to tell Mother," said Fanny. "She is sure to ask where he is." Mother did ask, of course, and the girls told her what had happened. "I find all this very difficult to believe," said Mother, astonished. "I think Joe is just spending the night with Moonface for a treat. Well, he certainly must come back tomorrow, for there is work for him to do." Nobody said any more. The girls and Dick felt very tired, and after some hot cocoa and potatoes cooked in their jackets for supper, they all went to bed. Bessie wondered how Joe was getting on at Moonface's. He was getting on all right, though he was very tired of being upside down. It didn't matter how hard he tried to get the right way up. He always swung back topsy-turvy again. The policeman had put a very strong spell on him. "You had better try to sleep in my bed," said Moonface. "I'll sleep on my sofa. I suppose I'll have to stand on my head all night," said poor Joe. And that's just what he did have to do. It was most uncomfortable. Once he lost his balance when he was asleep and tipped off the bed. He almost fell down the slippery slip, but Moonface, who was awake, reached out a hand and caught his leg just in time. "Gracious," said Moonface. "Don't go doing things like this in the middle of the night, Joe. It's most upsetting." "Well, how can I help it?" said Joe, feeling rather frightened himself. "I'll tie your feet to a nail on my wall," said Moonface. "Then you can't topple over when you are asleep." So he did that, and Joe didn't fall down any more. When morning came, was most astonished to find himself upside down, for at first he didn't remember what had happened. "I'll just peep up through the hole in the cloud and see if by any chance the land of spells is there yet," said Moonface. "If it is, we'll go up and see what we can do for you." So off he went up the little ladder and popped his head out of the hole in the cloud to see if the land of Topsy-Turvy was still there, or if it had gone. There was nothing there at all, only just the big white cloud, moving about like a thick mist. Moonface slipped down the ladder again. "Topsy-Turvy has gone, but the next land hasn't come yet," he said. "We'll have breakfast, and then I'll look again. Hallo, here's Silky. Stay and have breakfast, Silky, darling." "I came up to see how Joe was," said Silky. "Yes, I'd love to have breakfast. It's funny to watch Joe eating upside down. Hasn't the land of spells come yet?" "Not yet," said Moonface, putting a kettle on his stove to boil. "There's nothing there at all, but Topsy-Turvy is gone, thank goodness." They all had breakfast. Moonface cooked some porridge. "What do you want on your porridge?" he asked Joe. "Treacle, sugar, cream." Joe couldn't see any treacle, sugar, or cream on the table. "Treacle," he said. "Please, Moonface." Moonface handed him a small jug that seemed to be quite empty. "Treacle," he said to the jug in a firm voice, and treacle came pouring out as soon as Joe tipped up the jug. Silky wanted cream, and cream came out when Moonface said cream to the jug. It was great fun. Moonface went again to see if the land of spells had come. This time he came back excited. "It's there," he said. "Come on. I'd better take some money with me, I think, in case we have to buy the spell we want." He took a big purse down from a shelf, and then he and Silky helped Joe to walk upside down up the branch that led through the hole in the cloud to the little ladder. Up he went with great difficulty, holding on tightly to the rungs of the ladder with his hands. At last, he was up in the land of spells. This land was like a big marketplace. In it were all kinds of curious little shops and stalls. All kinds of people sold spells. In some of the shops sat tall wizards, famous for magic. In some of them were green-eyed witches, making spells as fast as they could. Outside, in the marketplace, sat all kinds of fairy folk at their stalls, pixies, gnomes, goblins, elves, all crying their wares at the tops of their high voices. "Spell to make a crooked nose straight," cried one pixie, rattling a yellow box in which were magic pills. "Spell to grow blue daffodils," cried a gnome showing a bottle of blue juice. "Spell to make cats sing," cried another gnome. Joe could hardly believe his ears. How queer. Who would want to make cats sing? "Now, we must just see if we can possibly find a spell to make you stand up straight again," said Moonface, and he went into a little low shop in which sat a strange goblin. The goblin had blue, pointed ears, and his eyes sparkled as if they had fireworks in them. "I want a spell," said Moonface. "What for?" asked the goblin. "I've a spell for everything under the sun in my shop. Very powerful spells, too, some of them. Would you like a spell to send you traveling straight off to the moon?" "Oh, no, thank you," said Moonface at once. "I know I look like the man in the moon, with my big round face, but I'm nothing at all to do with the moon, really." "Well, would you like a spell to make you as tall as a giant?" said the goblin, picking up a box and opening it. He showed Moonface a large blue pill inside. "Now, Take that pill, and you'll shoot up as high as a house. You'll feel fine. It only costs 1 piece of gold." "No, thank you," said Moonface. "If I grew as big as that, I'd never get down the hole in the cloud back to the faraway tree. And if I did, I'd never be able to get in at the door of my treehouse. I don't want silly spells like that." "Silly," cried the goblin in a rage. "You call my marvelous spells silly? Another word from you, stupid old round face, and I'll use a spell that will turn you into a big bouncing ball." Silky pulled Moonface out of the shop quickly. She was quite white. "Moonface, you know you shouldn't make these people cross," she whispered. "Why, you may find yourself nothing but a bouncing ball, or a black beetle, or something, if you are rude to them. For goodness sake, let me ask for the spell we want. Look, here's a bigger shop with a nice-looking witch inside." They all went in. The witch was knitting stockings from the green smoke that came from her fire. It was marvelous to watch her. Joe wished he wasn't upside down so that he might see her properly. "Good morning," said the witch. "Do you want a spell?" "Yes, please," said Silky in her most polite voice. "We want to make our friend Joe come the right way up again." "That's easy," said the witch, her green eyes looking in a kindly way at poor Joe. "I've only got to rub a walking spell on to the soles of his feet, and he will be all right. The walking spell will make his feet want to walk, and he will have to stand up the right way to walk on them, so he will be cured. Come here, boy." Joe walked over to the witch on his hands. She took down a jar from a shelf and opened it. It was full of purple ointment. The witch rubbed some on to the soles of Joe's shoes. "Rimini Romini Reet, stand on your own 2 feet. Rimini Romini Ro, the right way up you must go." And of course, you can guess what happened. Joe swung right over, stood on his 2 feet again, and there he was, as upright as Moonface and Silky. Wasn't he glad? Chapter 5. Saucepan Makes a Middle. Joe, Silky, and Moonface were so very pleased that Joe was the right way up again. "It feels funny," said Joe. "I feel quite giddy the right way up after standing upside down for so long." "Thank you, witch. How much is the spell?" "1 piece of gold," said the witch. Moonface put his hand into his large purse. He brought out a piece of gold. The witch threw it into the fire, and at once bright golden smoke came out. She took up her knitting needles and began to knit the yellow smoke into the stockings she was making. "I wanted a yellow pattern," she said, pleased. "Your piece of gold came just at the right moment." "Golly, this is a very magic land, isn't it?" said Joe, as the 3 of them walked out of the queer shop. "Fancy knitting stockings out of smoke. Don't let's go home yet, Moonface. I want to see a few more things." "All right," said Moonface, who wanted to explore a bit too. "Come on, I say. Look at the gnome who is selling a spell to make cats sing. Somebody has brought her cat to him. I wonder if the spell will really work." The servant of a witch had brought along a big black cat. He handed the gnome 2 silver pieces of money. The gnome took the cat on his knee. He opened its mouth and looked down it. Then he took a silver whistle and blew a tune softly down the cat's pink throat. The cat swallowed once or twice and then jumped off the gnome's knee. "Will it sing now?" asked the witch's little servant. "I daren't go back to my mistress unless it does." "It will sing whenever you pull its tail," said the gnome, turning to another customer. The witch's servant went off with the cat following behind. Joe took hold of Moonface's arm and whispered to him, "I'm going to pull the cat's tail. I do so want to hear if it really will sing." Moonface and Silky wanted to as well. They giggled to see Joe running softly after the big black cat. He took hold of its tail. He gave it a gentle pull. And then, oh, what a peculiar thing. The cat stopped, lifted up its head, and sang in a very deep man's voice. "Oh, once my whiskers grew so long I had to have a shave." The barber said, "It's not the way for whiskers to behave. If you're not careful, my dear cat, they'll grow into a beard. And then a billy goat you'll be, or something very weird." "Oh, once my tail became so short it hadn't got a wag," the grocer said. But what the grocer said about the cat's short tail, nobody ever knew. The servant of the witch turned round in surprise when he heard the cat singing, for he knew that he hadn't pulled the cat's tail. He saw Joe and the others grinning away nearby, and he was very angry. "How dare you use up the cat's singing?" he cried. "You wait till I tell the witch. She'll be after you. And you won't sing if she catches you. Quick, run," said Moonface. "If he does fetch, the witch will get into trouble." So they ran away fast, and were soon out of sight of the cat and the servant. They sank down under a tree, laughing. "Oh dear, that cat did sing a funny song," said Joe, wiping his eyes. "And what a lovely deep voice it had. Do you suppose its whiskers really did grow very long?" Just then the three heard a loud noise coming along. Clankily-clank, rattle, bang, crash. "The saucepan man," they all cried. "He's come up here too." And sure enough, it was old Saucepan, grinning all over his funny face. He had so many kettles and saucepans on that day that nothing could be seen of him except his face and his feet. "Hallo, hallo," he said. "I guessed you were up here, been having fun." "Yes," said Joe. "I'm all right again, look. It's so nice to walk the proper way up again. And oh, Saucepan, we've just heard a cat sing." Saucepan actually heard what Joe said, but he couldn't believe that he had heard right. So he put his hand behind his ear and said, "What did you say?" "I thought you said you'd heard a cat sing, but I heard wrong, I know." "No, you heard right," said Moonface. "We did hear a cat sing. It's funny, but I thought you said again that you heard a cat sing," said Saucepan. "I must be very deaf this morning." "Saucepan, you're not deaf today, you heard right," shouted Joe. But it was no good. The Saucepan man couldn't believe that he had heard right, so they just gave it up. "Let's go and explore a bit more," said Joe. So up they got, and off they went. A witch was selling a spell to make ordinary broomsticks fly through the air. The four watched in amazement as they saw her rubbing a pink ointment on to a broom handle belonging to an elf. "Now get on it," say Whiz Away. "And you can fly home," said the witch. The elf got astride the broomstick, a smile on her pretty face. "Whiz away," she said, and off whizzed the broomstick up into the air, with the elf clinging tightly to it. "I'd like to buy that spell," said Joe. "I wonder how much it is." The witch heard him. 3 silver pieces, she said. Joe hadn't even got one, but Moonface had. He took them out of his large purse and gave them to the witch. "Where's your broomstick?" she said. "We haven't got one with us," said Joe. "But can't you give us the ointment instead, please?" "Well, I'll give you just a little," said the witch. She took a tiny pink jar and put a dab of the pink ointment into it. Joe took it and put it into his pocket. "Now Now maybe his mother's broomstick would learn to fly. At the next stall, a goblin was selling a spell to make things big. The spell was in big tins and looked like paint. "Just think what a useful spell this is," yelled the goblin to the passers-by. "Have you visitors coming to tea and only a small cake to offer them? A dab of this spell and the cake swells to twice its size. Have you a suit you have grown out of? A dab of this spell and it will grow to the right size. Marvelous, wonderful, amazing, and astonishing. Buy, whilst you've got the chance." Saucepan heard all that the goblin said, for he was shouting at the top of his voice. He began to look in all his kettles and saucepans. "What do you want?" asked Joe. "My money," said the saucepan man. "I always keep it in one of my kettles or saucepans, but I never remember which. I simply must buy that spell. Think how useful it would be to me. Sometimes, when I go round selling my goods, a customer will say to me, 'Oh, you haven't a big enough kettle.' But now I shall be able to make my kettles just as big as I like. And we can dab the pop biscuits with the spell too, and make them twice as big." He found his money at last, and paid it to the goblin, who handed him a tin of the spell. Saucepan was very pleased. He longed to try it on something. He took the brush and dabbed a daisy nearby with the spell. The daisy at once grew to twice its size. Then Saucepan dabbed a bumblebee, and that grew enormous. It buzzed around Moonface, and he waved it away. "Saucepan, don't do any more bees," he begged. "I expect their stings are twice as big too. Look, let's go to that sweet shop over there and buy some sweets. It would be fun to make them twice as big." They hurried to the shop, but on the way a dreadful thing happened. Saucepan fell over one of his kettles and upset the tin in which he carried the spell. It splashed up, and drops of it fell on to Moonface, Silky, Joe, and the old Saucepan man too. And in a trice, they all shot up to twice their size. Silky grew to 3 times her size because more drops fell on her. They stared at one another. How small the land of spells suddenly seemed. How little the witches and goblins looked. How tiny the shops were. "Saucepan, you really are careless," cried Moonface, vexed. "Look what you've done to us. Now what are we to do?" Silky clutched hold of Moonface's arm. "Moonface," she said. "Oh, Moonface, do you suppose we're too big to go down the hole through the cloud?" Moonface turned pale. "We'd better go and see," he said. "Come on, everybody." Frightened and silent, all 4 of them hurried to where the hole led down to the Faraway tree. How little it seemed to the 4 big people now. Moonface tried to get down. He stuck. He couldn't slip down at all. "It's no use," he said. "We're too big to go down. Whatever in the world shall we do?" Chapter 6. What can they do now? Joe, Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan sat down by the hole and thought hard. Silky began to cry. The Saucepan man looked most uncomfortable. He was very fond of Silky. "Silky, please do forgive me for being so careless," he said in a small voice. "I didn't mean to do this. Don't cry. You make me feel dreadful." "It's all right," sobbed Silky, borrowing Moonface's hanky. "I know you didn't mean to, but I can't help feeling dreadfully sad when I think I won't ever be able to see my dear little room in the Faraway tree anymore." The Saucepan man began to cry too. Tears dripped with a splash into his saucepans and kettles. He put his arm round Silky, and 2 or 3 kettle spouts stuck into her. she said. You're sticking into me. Moonface, Joe, can't you think of something to do? Can we possibly squeeze down if we hold our breaths and make ourselves as small as we can? Quite impossible, said Moonface gloomily. Listen, there's somebody coming up the ladder. They heard voices, and soon a head popped up out of the hole in the cloud. It was Dick's. He stared in the very greatest surprise at the 4 enormous people sitting by the hole. He climbed up and stood beside them, looking very, very small. Then up came Bessie and Fanny. Their eyes nearly fell out of their heads when they saw how big Joe and his friends were. What's happened? Cried Dick. We began to be worried because you didn't come home, Joe, so we climbed up to see where you were. But why are you so enormous? Joe told them. Silky sobbed into Moonface's hanky. Bessie put her arm round her. It was funny to feel Silky so very big. Bessie's arm only went half round Silky's waist. And now, you see, we can't get back down the hole, said Joe. I know what you can do, said Dick suddenly. What? Cried everyone hopefully. Why, rub the hole with the spell, and it will get bigger, of course, said Dick. Then you'll be able to get down it. Why ever didn't we think of that before? Cried Joe, jumping up. Saucepan, where's that tin with the spell in? He picked up the tin, but alas, it was quite empty. Every single drop had been spilt when the saucepan had fallen over. Well, never mind, said Moonface, cheering up. We can go and buy some more from that goblin. Come on. They all set off, Dick, Bessie, and Fanny, looking very small indeed by the others. They went up to the goblin who had sold them the spell. May we have another tin of that spell you sold us just now? Asked Moonface, holding out the empty tin. Sorry, said the goblin. I'm sold out of that. Not a drop left. Everyone stared in the greatest dismay. Sold out. Now what were they to do? Haven't you even a little tiny drop left? Asked Joe. Or couldn't you make some more? I've not the tiniest drop left, said the goblin. And I can't make any more till the full moon comes. It can only be made in the moonlight. Everyone looked so miserable that the goblin felt sorry for them. Why do you look so unhappy? He said. What has happened? Joe told him everything. The goblin listened with great interest. Then he smiled. Well, my dear boy, he said, if you can't get a spell to make the hole big, why don't you buy a spell to make yourself small? My brother, the green goblin over there, sells that kind of spell. Only be careful not to put too much on yourselves, or you may go smaller than you mean to. Once my aunt did that, and she went down to the size of a beetle. I was pleased because she spanked me every day, but now she can't spank me anymore. I keep her in a matchbox. Could you show us? Asked Dick eagerly. But Moonface took his arm and led him away at once. Don't let's waste time, he said. Let's get that spell for goodness sake. The green goblin may sell out all he's got if we aren't quick. They went over to the green goblin. He was yelling at the top of his voice. Buy my wonderful and most amazing spell. It will make anything as small as you like. Have you an enemy? Dab him with this and see him shrink to the size of a mouse. Have you too big a nose? Dab it with this and make it the right size. Oh, wonderful, astonishing, amazing. Everyone hurried up. Moonface took some money out of his purse. I'll have the spell, please, he said. The green goblin gave him a tin. The spell in it looked rather like paint, just as the other had done. Now go slow, said the goblin. You don't want to get too small. Try a little at a time. Moonface dabbed a little on Silky. She went a bit smaller at once. He dabbed again. She went smaller still. Is she the right size yet? Asked Moonface. Everyone stared at Silky. Not quite, said Bessie. But she is almost, Moonface. So be careful with your next dab. Moonface was very careful. At the next dab of the spell, Silky went to exactly her right size. She was so pleased. Now you, Joe, said Moonface. So he dabbed Joe and got Joe back to his right size again, too. Then he tried dabbing the saucepan man and soon got him right. His kettles and saucepans went right, too. It was funny to watch them. Now I'll do you, Moonface, said Joe. No, thanks. I'll do myself, said Moonface. He dabbed the spell onto himself and shrank smaller. He dabbed again and went smaller still. Then he stopped dabbing and put the brush down. You're not quite your ordinary size yet, said Joe. I know, said Moonface, but I always thought I was a bit on the short side. Now I'm just about right. I always wanted to be a bit taller. I shan't dab myself any more. Everyone laughed. It was funny to see Moonface a bit taller than usual. As they stood there and laughed, a curious cold wind began to blow. Moonface looked all round and then began to shout. Quick, quick, the land of spells is on the move. Hurry before we get left behind. Everyone got a shock. Good gracious. It would never do to be left behind, just as everyone had got small enough to go down the hole in the clouds. They set off to the hole. The wind blew more and more strongly, and suddenly the sun went out. It was almost as if somebody had blown it out, Joe thought. At once darkness fell on the land of spells. Take hold of hands, cried Joe. We shall lose one another if we don't. They all took hold of one another's hands and called out their names to make sure everyone was there. They stumbled on through the darkness. Here's the hole, cried Joe at last, and down he went. He felt the ladder and climbed down that too. The others followed one by one, pushing close behind in the dark, longing to get down to the faraway tree they knew so well. How lovely it would be to sit in Moonface's room and feel safe. But down at the bottom of the ladder, there was no faraway tree. Instead, to Joe's astonishment, there was a narrow passage, lit by a swinging green lantern. I say, he said to the others, what's this? Where's the faraway tree? We've come down the wrong hole, groaned Moonface. Oh, goodness, what bad luck. Well, where are we? Asked Dick in wonder. I don't know, said Moonface. We'd better follow this passage and see where it leads to. It's no use climbing back and trying to find the right hole. We'd never find it in the dark, and anyway, I'm pretty sure the land of spells has moved on by now. Everyone felt very gloomy. Joe led the way down the passage. It twisted and turned, went up and down steps, and was lighted here and there by the green lanterns swinging from the roof. At last, they came to a big yellow door. On it was a blue knocker, a blue bell, a blue letterbox, and a blue notice that said, Mr. Changeabout. Knock once, ring twice, and rattle the letterbox. Joe knocked once very loudly. Then he rang twice, and everyone heard the bell going. And then he rattled the letterbox. The door didn't open. It completely disappeared. It was most peculiar. 1 minute it was there, and the next it had gone, and there was nothing in front of them. They could see right into a big underground room. At the end of it, by a roaring fire, a round, fat person was sitting. That must be Mr. Changeabout," whispered Dick. "Dare we go in?" Chapter 7. Mr. Changeabout and the Enchanter. Everyone stared at Mr. Changeabout. At least, as he was the only person in the room, they thought that was who it must be. He got up and came towards them. He was a fat, comfortable-looking person with a broad smile on his face. "Dear me, what a lot of visitors," he said. "Do sit down." There was nowhere to sit except the floor. This was made of stone and looked rather cold, so nobody sat down. Something happened to Mr. Changeabout when nobody obeyed him. He grew tall and thin. His broad smile disappeared, and a frown came all over his face. He looked a most unpleasant person. "Sit down," he roared, and everybody sat down in a hurry. "No wonder he's called Mr. Changeabout," whispered Dick to Joe. "Did you ever see a person change so quickly? He was fat, now he's thin. He looked good-tempered, now he looks the worst-tempered creature in the world." "Shh," said Joe. "He might hear you." Mr. Changeabout looked at the saucepan man, who had sat down with a tremendous clatter. "Have you a nice little kettle that would boil enough water for 2 cups of tea?" he asked. The saucepan man didn't hear. So Joe shouted in his ear, and he beamed, got up, and undid a dear little kettle from the many that hung about him. "Just the thing," he said, handing it to Mr. Changeabout. "Try it and see." Mr. Changeabout changed again, and became a happy-looking little creature with dancing eyes and a sweet smile. He took the kettle. "Thank you," he said. "So kind of you. Just what I wanted. How much is it?" "Nothing at all," said the saucepan man. "Just a present to you." "Well, allow me to hand round some chocolate to you all in return for such a nice present," said Mr. Changeabout, and fetched an enormous box of chocolates from a cupboard. Everybody was pleased. Dick looked carefully into the box when his turn came. His hand stretched out for the very biggest chocolate of all. Mr. Changeabout at once changed again and flew into a rage. He became thin and mean-looking. His nose shot out long, and his eyes grew small. He danced about in a temper. "Bad boy, greedy boy," he shouted. "You shan't any of you have my chocolates now. Horrid, greedy children." And at once all the chocolates changed to little hard stones. Bessie had hers in her mouth, and she spat it out at once. The others looked most disgusted. The old saucepan man gave a yell of dismay. "I've swallowed mine, and now I suppose I've got a stone inside me. Oh, you nasty Mr. Changeabout. I'll show you what I think of your chocolates." And to everyone's surprise, Saucepan rushed at the surprised Mr. Changeabout, knocked his box of stone chocolates all over the room, and began to pummel him hard. Biff, smack, biff, smack. Goodness, how the old saucepan man fought Mr. Changeabout. And Mr. Changeabout fought back, but what was the good of that? Saucepan was so hung about, with pans of all kinds, that nobody could possibly hit him anywhere without grazing their knuckles and hurting themselves very much indeed. Clang, clatter, clang, clatter, clash. The kettles and saucepans made an enormous noise, and everyone began to laugh. For really, Saucepan looked too funny for words, dancing about on the floor, hitting and slapping at Mr. Changeabout. Mr. Changeabout suddenly got very big and fierce-looking, but old Saucepan didn't seem to mind at all. He just went on hitting out at him and shouted, "The bigger you are, the more there is to hit. The bigger you are, the more there's to hit." So then Mr. Changeabout got very small indeed, as small as a mouse, and ran squealing across the floor in fright. Quick as lightning, Saucepan picked him up, popped him into a kettle, and put the lid on him. "Oh, Saucepan, whatever will you do next?" said Joe, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. "I've never seen such a funny fight in my life. Be careful Mr. Changeabout doesn't squeeze out of the spout." "I'll stuff it with paper," said Saucepan, tearing some from the box of chocolates. "Now he's safe. Well, what do we do next?" "We'd better get out of here," said Joe, standing up. He turned towards the doorway, but what was this? There was no doorway and no door. Only a wall of rock that ran all round the underground room now. "Goodness, how do we get out?" said Joe, puzzled. "This is a very magic kind of place. There's no window, of course, because we are underground," said Dick. "What in the wide world are we going to do?" "What about the chimney?" asked Fanny, running to the fire. "It looks pretty big. We could put the fire out and climb up, perhaps." "Well, that looks about our only chance of getting out of here," said Joe. He looked round for some water to put out the fire. He saw a tap jutting out from the wall and went to it. He put a pail underneath and turned on the tap. The water was bright green and soon filled the pail. Joe threw it on the fire. It made a terrific sizzling noise and went out at once, puffing clouds of green smoke into the room. Joe stepped on to the dead fire and looked up the chimney. "There's an iron ladder going right up," he called in excitement. "Come on, we shall get dirty, but we can't help that. Hurry before anything else queer happens." Up the ladder he went. It was hot from the heat of the fire, but grew colder the higher he went. "What an enormously long chimney," called back Joe. "Is everyone coming?" "Yes, yes," called 6 voices below him. Joe climbed steadily upwards. At last, the ladder came to an end. Joe clambered over the top of it and found himself in a most peculiar place. "This looks like some kind of cellar," he said to the others, as they scrambled up beside him. "Look at all those sacks piled up. What do you suppose is in them?" "Let's look," said Dick, who was always curious about everything. He undid a sack, and, goodness gracious me, out poured a great stream of bright golden pieces of money. Everyone looked at it in astonishment. "Somebody very rich must live here," said Joe at last. "I never in my life saw so much gold. I can't believe that all the sacks are full of it." He undid another sack, and out poured gold again. Just as everyone was running their fingers through it, marveling at the gleam and shine of so much gold, there came the sound of quick footsteps overhead. "Somebody's coming," said Joe. "Goodness, I hope it's someone friendly." A door above them opened, and a gleam of sunlight shone on to a flight of stone steps leading up from the cellar to the door. A tall man in a pointed hat looked down. "Golly, it's an enchanter," whispered Moonface in a fright. "We must still be in the land of spells." "Oh dear, robbers, thieves, burglars," shouted the enchanter in a loud voice. "Servants, come here, capture these robbers. They are after my gold. See, they have undone 2 sacks already." "We don't want your gold," cried Dick. "We only just wanted to know what was in all these sacks." "I don't believe you," cried the enchanter, as about a dozen small imps came running past him down the steps into the cellar. "No, I don't believe you. Capture them, servants, and tie them up. The the little imps pulled everyone up the cellar steps into a big, sunlit room. Its ceiling was so high that nobody could see it. "Now tie them up," commanded the enchanter. Moonface suddenly snatched a kettle from saucepan and snapped the string that tied it to him. He went towards the enchanter fearlessly. "Wait," he cried, much to the astonishment of all the others. "Wait before you do this foolish thing. I am an enchanter too, and in this kettle I have Mr. Changeabout. Yes, he is a prisoner there. And let me tell you this, that if you dare to tie me up, I'll put you into the kettle too, with Mr. Changeabout." From the kettle came a small, squealing voice. "Set me free, enchanter, set me free." "Oh, do set me free." The enchanter turned quite pale. He knew it was Mr. Changeabout's voice. This is most peculiar," he said. "How did you capture Mr. Changeabout? He is a very powerful person and a great friend of mine." "Oh, I'm not going to tell you what magic I used," said Moonface boldly. "Now, are you going to let us go, or shall I put you into this kettle too?" "I'll let you go," said the enchanter, and he waved them all towards a door at the end of the room. "You may leave at once." Everyone rushed to the door gladly. They all ran through it, expecting to come out into the sunshine. But alas for them, the enchanter had played them a trick. They found themselves going up many hundreds of stairs, up and up and up. And when they came to the top, there was nothing but a round room with one small window. A bench stood at one end, and a table at the other. The enchanter's voice floated up to them. "Ho ho, I've got you nicely. Now I'm going to get my friend, Wizard Wily, and he'll soon tell me how to deal with robbers like you." "We are in a trap," groaned Joe. "Moonface, you were very clever and very brave. But honestly, we are worse off than ever. I simply don't see any way out of this at all." Chapter 8. How Can They Escape? Moonface looked all round the room at the top of the tower. "Well, we're in a nice fix now," he said gloomily. "It's no use going down the stairs again. We shall find the door at the bottom locked. And what's the good of a window that is half a mile from the ground?" Joe looked out of the window. "Gracious," he said, "the tower is awfully tall. I can hardly see the bottom of it. Hallo, there's the enchanter going off in his carriage. I suppose he is going to fetch his friend, dear Wizard Wily." "I don't like the sound of Wizard Wily," said Silky. "Joe, Dick, Moonface, please think of some way to escape." But there just simply wasn't any way. No one wanted to jump out of the window. They all sat down. "I'm dreadfully hungry," said Bessie. "Has anyone got anything to eat?" "I may have got some pop biscuits," said Moonface, feeling in his pockets. But he hadn't. "Feel in your pockets, Joe and Dick." Both boys felt, hoping to find a bit of toffee or half a biscuit. Dick brought out a collection of string, bits of paper, a pencil, and a few marbles. Joe took out much the same kind of things, but with his rubbish came a pink jar, very small and heavy. "What's in that jar?" asked Bessie, who hadn't seen it before. "Isn't it pretty? Let me see, what can it be?" wondered Joe, as he unscrewed the lid. "Oh, I know. We saw a witch selling whiz-away ointment for broomsticks in the land of spells, and I thought it would be such fun to rub some on Mother's broomstick and see it fly through the air. So we bought some. Smell it, it's delicious." Everyone smelt it. Moonface suddenly got tremendously excited. "I say," he began, I say, oh, I say. Well, say then, said Joe. What's the matter? Oh, I say, said Moonface, stammering all the more. Listen, if only we could get a broomstick, we could rub this pink ointment on it and fly away on it. Moonface, that's a very good idea, if only we had a broomstick. But we haven't, said Joe. Look at this room, a table and a bench, no sign of a broomstick at all. Well, I'll run down the stairs and see if I can possibly get a broomstick, said Moonface, getting all excited. I saw some standing in a corner of that room we were in. I'll do my best anyway. Good old Moonface, said everyone, as they watched the round-faced little fellow scurry down the hundreds of steps. If only he gets a broomstick. Moonface hurried down and down. It did seem such a very long way. At last, he came to the bottom of the stairs. An enormous wooden door was at the bottom, fast shut. Moonface tried to open it, but he couldn't. So he banged on the door loudly. A surprised voice called out, "Hi there. What are you banging on the door for? What do you want?" "A broomstick," said Moonface loudly. "A broomstick," said the voice, more astonished than ever. "Whatever for?" "To sweep up some crumbs," said Moonface, quite untruthfully. "A dustpan and brush will do for that," cried the voice, and the door opened a crack. A dustpan and brush shot in with a clatter and came to rest by Moonface's feet. Then the door shut with a bang and heavy bolts shot into place at the other side. "A dustpan and brush," said Moonface in disgust. "Now, who can ride away on those?" He banged on the door again. "Now what's the matter?" yelled the voice angrily. "These won't do," said Moonface. "I want a broomstick." "Well, go on wanting," said the voice. "You won't get one. I suppose you think you'll fly away on one if I give it to you. I'm not quite so silly as that. What do you suppose my master would say to me when he came back if I'd given you one of his broomsticks to escape on?" Moonface groaned. He knew it was no good asking again. He picked up the dustpan and brush and climbed the stairs slowly, suddenly feeling very tired. Everyone was waiting for him. "Did you get it, Moonface?" they cried. But when they saw Moonface's gloomy face and the dustpan and brush in his hand, they were very sad. They all sat down to think. Joe looked up. "I suppose it wouldn't be any good rubbing the whiz-away ointment onto anything else?" he asked. "Would it make anything but broomsticks fly away?" "I shouldn't think so," said Moonface. "But we could try. What is there to try on, though? We haven't a stick of any sort." "No, but there's a table over there and this bench," said Joe, getting excited. "Couldn't we try on those? We could easily sit on them and fly off if only the magic would work." "But it won't," said Silky. "I'm sure of that. It's only for broomsticks. But try it, Joe." Joe took off the lid of the jar again. He dabbed a finger into the pink ointment and rubbed some all over the top of the wooden bench, which was very like a form at school. "Now for the table," said Joe. He turned it upside down, thinking that it would be more comfortable to sit on that way. They could hold the legs as they went. He rubbed the ointment all over the underside of the table. As he was doing this, everyone heard the sound of horses, hoofs clip-clopping outside. Silky ran to the window. "It's the enchanter come back again, and he's got the wizard Wiley with him," she cried. "Oh, do be quick, Joe. They will be up here in a minute." "Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan, you sit on the bench," said Joe. "You girls and Dick and I will sit on the table. Hurry now." Everyone scrambled to take their seats. Silky was trembling with excitement. She could hear the footsteps of the enchanter and the wizard coming up the steps. There was just room on the tabletop for the 4 children. They squeezed close to one another. "Now, hold tight in case we really do go off," said Joe. "Ready, everyone, then whiz away home." And goodness gracious, the bench and the table began to move. Yes, they really did. They moved slowly at first, for they were not used to whizzing away. But as the children squealed and squeaked in surprise and delight, the table rose up suddenly to the window and tried to get out. It was really most exciting. It stuck. It couldn't get through. "Oh, table, do your best," cried Joe. "The enchanter is nearly here." The table tipped itself up a little, and then it could just manage to squeeze through the opening. The children each clung tightly to a leg, afraid of being tipped off. Then at last the table was through the window, and sailing away upside down, its 4 legs in the air, carrying the excited children safely. It whizzed off over the land of spells. Joe looked back to see if the wooden bench was coming too. It had had to wait until the table was through the window. Just as it was about to jerk upwards to the window, the enchanter and the wizard Wiley had come rushing into the room. What would have happened if the old saucepan man hadn't suddenly thrown a kettle at them? Goodness knows. It was the kettle with Mr. Changeabout in. The lid came off. Mr. Changeabout jumped out and turned himself almost into a giant. The enchanter fell over him, and Mr. Changeabout, not seeing who it was at all, began to pummel him hard with his big fists, crying, "I'll teach you to put me into a kettle. I'll teach you to put me into a kettle." Wiley hit out at Mr. Changeabout, not knowing in the least who he was, or where he had suddenly sprung from. And there was a perfectly marvelous fight going on, just as the wooden bench flew out of the window. The enchanter saw it going and tried to get hold of it. But just at that moment, Mr. Changeabout gave him such a hard punch on the nose that he fell over, smack again. "Go it, Changeabout," yelled Moonface. "Hit him hard." And out of the window sailed the bench, with Moonface, Silky, and Saucepan clinging tightly to it. Far away in the distance was the upside-down table. The table whizzed steadily onwards, over hills and woods, and once over the sea. "We've come a very long way from home since we've been in the land of spells," said Joe. "I hope the table knows its way to our home. I don't want to land in any more strange lands just at present." The table knew its way all right. Joe gave a shout as it flew over a big dark wood. "The enchanted wood," he cried. "We're nearly home." The table flew down to the garden of the children's cottage. Their mother was there, hanging out some clothes. She looked round in the greatest astonishment when she saw them arrive in such a peculiar way. "Well, really," she said, "whatever next? Do you usually fly around the country in an upside-down table?" "Oh, Mother, we've had such an adventure," said Joe, scrambling off. He looked up in the air to see if the bench was following, but there was no sign of it. "Where's the bench?" said Dick. "Oh, I suppose it will go to the Faraway tree, as that is where the others live." Gracious, I feel all trembly. Joe, I am not going into any more lands at the top of the Faraway tree again. It's just a bit too exciting. "Right," said Joe. "I feel the same. No more adventures for me. Chapter 9. The Land of Dreams. The children had had enough of adventures for some time. Their mother set them to work in the garden, and they did their best for her. Nobody suggested going to the enchanted wood at all. I hope old Moonface, Silky, and the saucepan man got back to the tree safely, said Joe one day. Moonface was wondering the same thing about the children. He and Silky talked about it. We haven't seen the children for ages, he said. Let's slip down the tree, Silky, and make sure they got back all right, shall we? After all, it would be dreadful if they hadn't got back, and their mother was worrying about them. So one afternoon, just after lunch, Silky and Moonface walked up to the door of the cottage. Bessie opened it and squealed with delight to see them. Moonface, so you got back safely after all. Come in, Silky darling. Saucepan, you'll have to take off a kettle or two if you want to get in at the door. The children's parents were out. The children and their friends sat and talked about their last adventure. What land is at the top of the tree now? Asked Dick curiously. Don't know, said Moonface. Like to come and see? No, thanks, said Joe at once. We're not going up there anymore. Well, come back and have tea with us, said Moonface. Silky's got some pop biscuits, and I've made some Google buns. I don't often make them, and I tell you they're a treat. Google buns, said Bessie in astonishment. Whatever are they? You come and see, said Moonface, grinning. They're better than pop biscuits, aren't they, Silky? Much, said Silky. The children looked at one another. Well, Fanny and I have finished our work, said Bessie. What about you boys? We've got about half an hour's more work to do, that's all, said Joe. If everyone helps, it will only take about 10 minutes. We could leave a note for Mother. I would rather like to try those Google buns. Well, everyone went into the garden to dig up the carrots and put them into piles. It didn't take more than 10 minutes because they all worked so hard. They put away their tools, washed their hands, left a note for Mother, and then set off for the enchanted wood. The saucepan man sang one of his ridiculous songs on the way. 2 tails for a kitten, 2 clouds for the sky, 2 pigeons for Christmas to make a plum pie. Everyone laughed. Joe, Bessie, and Fanny had heard the saucepan man's silly songs before, but Dick hadn't. Go on, said Dick. This is the silliest song I've ever heard. The saucepan man clashed 2 kettles together as he sang. 2 roses for Bessie, 2 spankings for Joe, 2 ribbons for Fanny, with a ho-dary-ho. It's an easy song to make up as you go along, said Bessie, giggling. Every line but the last has to begin with the word to. Just think of any nonsense you like, and the song simply makes itself. Singing silly songs, they all reached the faraway tree. Saucepan yelled up it. Hi, what's his name? Let down a rope, there's a good fellow. It's too hot to walk up today. The rope came down. They all went up one by one, pulled high by the strong arms of Mr. What's-his-name. Fanny was unlucky. She got splashed by Dame Washalot's water on the way up. Next time I go up on the rope, I shall take an umbrella with me, she said crossly. Come on, said Moonface. Come and eat a Google bun and see what you think of it. Soon they were all sitting on the broad branches outside Moonface's house, eating pop biscuits and Google buns. The buns were most peculiar. They each had a very large currant in the middle, and this was filled with sherbet. So when you got to the currant and bit it, the sherbet frothed out and filled your mouth with fine bubbles that tasted delicious. The children got a real surprise when they bit their currants, and Moonface almost fell off the branch with laughing. "Come and see some new cushions I've got," he said to the children when they had eaten as many biscuits and buns as they could manage. Joe, Bessie, and Fanny went into Moonface's funny round house. Moonface looked round for Dick, but he wasn't there. "Where's Dick?" he said. "Dick, Dick. He's gone up the ladder to peep and see what land is at the top," said Silky. "I told him not to, but he's rather a naughty boy, I think." "Gracious," said Joe, running out of the house. "Dick, come back, you silly." Everyone began to shout, "Dick, Dick," but no answer came down the ladder. The big white cloud swirled above silently, and nobody could imagine why Dick didn't come back. "I'll go and see what he's doing," said Moonface. So up he went, and he didn't come back either. Then the old saucepan man went cautiously up, step by step. He disappeared through the hole, and he didn't come back. "Whatever has happened to them?" said Joe in the gravest astonishment. "Look here, girls, get a rope out of Moonface's house and tie yourselves and Silky to me. Then I'll go up the ladder, and if anyone tries to pull me into the land above, they won't be able to, because you three can pull me back." "See, right," said Bessie, and she knotted the rope round her waist and Fanny's, and then round Silky's too. Joe tied the other end to himself. Then up the ladder he went, and before the girls quite knew what had happened, Joe was lifted into the land above, and they were all dragged up too, their feet scrambling somehow up the ladder and through the hole in the cloud. There they all stood in a field of red poppies, with a tall man nearby, holding a sack over his shoulder. "Is that the lot?" he asked. "Good. Well, here's something to make you sleep." He put his hand in his sack and scattered a handful of the finest sand over the surprised group. In a trice, they were rubbing their eyes and yawning. "This is the land of dreams," said Moonface sleepily. "And that's the Sandman. Goodness, how sleepy I am." "Don't go to sleep, don't go to sleep," cried Silky, taking Moonface's arm and shaking him. "If we do, we'll wake up and find that this land has moved away from the faraway tree. Come back down the hole, Moonface, and don't be silly." "I'm so sleepy," said Moonface, and lay down among the red poppies. In a trice he was snoring loudly, fast asleep. "Get him to the hole," cried Silky. But Joe, Dick, and the saucepan man were all yawning and rubbing their eyes, too sleepy to do a thing. Then Bessie and Fanny slid down quietly into the poppies and fell asleep too. At last, only Silky was left. Not much of the sleepy sand had gone into her eyes, so she was wider awake than the rest. She stared at everyone in dismay. "Oh dear," she said, "I'll never get you down the hole by myself. I'll have to get help. I must go and fetch What's-his name, and the angry pixie, and Dame Washalot too." She ran off to the hole, slipped down the ladder through the cloud, and slid on to the broad branch below. "What's-his name?" she called. "Dame Washalot, angry pixie." After a minute or two, Joe woke up. He rubbed his eyes and sat up. Not far off, he saw something that pleased him very much indeed. It was an ice cream man with his cart. The man was ringing his bell loudly. "Hi, Moonface, wake up," cried Joe. "There's an ice cream man. Have you any money?" Everyone woke up. Moonface felt in his purse, and then stared in the greatest surprise. It was full of marbles, Now who put marbles there? He wondered. The ice cream man rode up. Marbles will do to pay for my ice cream, he said. So Moonface paid him 6 marbles. The man gave them each a packet and rode off, ringing his bell. Moonface undid his packet, expecting to find a delicious ice cream there. But inside there was a big whistle. It was most astonishing. Everyone else had a whistle too. How extraordinary, said Dick. This is the kind of thing that happens in dreams. Well, after all, this is dreamland, said Bessie. I wonder if these whistles blow. She blew hers. It was very loud indeed. The others blew theirs too. And at once 6 policemen appeared nearby, running for all they were worth. They rushed up to the children. What's the matter? They cried. You are blowing police whistles. What has happened? Do you want help? No, said Dick with a giggle. Then you must come to the swimming bath, said the policeman. And to everyone's enormous astonishment, they were all led off. Why the swimming bath? Said Fanny. Listen, policeman, we haven't got bathing costumes. Oh, you naughty storyteller, said the policeman nearest to her. And to Bessie's tremendous surprise, she found that she had on a blue and white bathing costume, and all the others had bathing suits too. It was most extraordinary. They came to the swimming bath, but there was no water in it at all. Get in and swim, said the policeman. There's no water, said Dick. Don't be silly. And then, very suddenly, all the policemen began to cry, and in a trice the swimming bath was full of their tears. This sort of thing makes me feel funny, said Joe. I don't want to swim in tears. Quick, everyone, push the policemen into the bath. And in half a second, all the policemen were kicking feebly in the bath of tears. As the children watched, they changed into blue fishes and swam away, flicking their tails. I feel as if I'm in a dream, said Dick. So do I, said Joe. I wish I could get out of it. Oh, look, there's an aeroplane coming down. Perhaps we could get into it and fly away. The aeroplane, which was small and green, landed nearby. There was nobody in it at all. The children ran to it and got in. Joe pushed down the handle marked up. Off we go, he said, and off they went.